Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with our regular family of seekers. We're reading through the Bhagavad Gita verse by verse, and today we are on the seventh chapter, and I think we're going to start with the 18th text. I think is where we're starting. Let me see here. Where are we starting? Yeah, we're starting with the 18th text. Okay, great. And I'm excited to be here with you all today. I look forward to this every Monday and Thursday. It's like the food for the soul, right? Getting together, talking about these spiritual topics and its relevance to our lives. It really, I don't know, it feeds me for the week. So I know many of you have shared the same. So glad you're here. Happy to do this journey with you all. So let's go ahead and start with chapter 7, text 18. We're going to try to get through a few verses today. Stella, whenever we should do our prayers. Ha, almost forgot. Shakti's not here. Brittany, do you want to do the prayer this morning?
Sure.
Thank you.
Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. My teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet.
Thank you so much. So nice to set the intention right there in gratitude for our teachers, right? Okay, and Stella, whenever you're ready, if you want to start with 18.
Okay. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal.
Thank you.
A great verse.
Yeah. So if we back up a little bit, if we remember in the last episode, Krishna talked about the four types of people who come to him, right? And he talked about the distressed, they're in need of something, they're curious, or the yanis, they're seeking knowledge, right? They're in knowledge. And here he is saying that that person, the one who seeks him out of knowledge, is the dearest, right? And so well, actually, I guess in the last verse, he said that he's the dearest. So now in this verse, he's expanding, he's showing his gratitude. He's saying, look, I appreciate all of them. I appreciate the distressed person. I appreciate the one that comes to me looking for wealth. I appreciate the curious seeker. You know, I appreciate the knower. And that's huge, right? But he's saying, being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me the highest and the most perfect goal. Right? So a lot of people, I mean, let's be honest, when people are in trouble, they look everywhere else first, right? Money, substances, relationships, distractions, right? But when someone turns to Krishna, even if their devotion is mixed with personal desires, he treasures that. So that's pretty big. He's saying all of these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls. Just like if you're starving and someone gives you even like a small piece of bread, you feel incredibly grateful. Right? Krishna's like that with devotion. He's so hungry for love that he gratefully accepts even a little, even if it's mixed with personal desires. And this is showing his like large heartedness. Just like, another way to think about it is like a beloved child who's been estranged from their parents for years. And the parent longs to help but can't because there's no contact. And then finally the child reaches out. And even if the child is reaching out just to ask for help with something practical, the parent is overjoyed. Of course they'll help, but beyond that, they're thrilled that the child even reconnected at all. And even if the affection is small, the parent treasures it hoping that that will open the door to a deeper relationship. So Krishna's joy is like that, it's to approach God for material things. It's not bad. He's still happy with that. He's happy with that because at the prospect of it opening up the door to a deeper relationship. Because that's what he's really seeking. Right? So it's like if Krishna treasures even this like mixed devotion, what does this say about how we view our own imperfect but sincere efforts? I know even just like in services, it's so easy to get down on yourself or hard on yourself if you're not meeting the goal or things aren't going the way that they're supposed to, or say you plan some outreach and nobody shows up. That's happened to me. Right? It's like, and you get down on yourself. But we should understand that that is the ego, right? That's the ego because Krishna doesn't talk to us like that. Right? Krishna treasures mixed devotion, what to speak of somebody who comes with sincere efforts and maybe doesn't turn out, maybe the results are imperfect, but their effort is sincere, right? Krishna sees that, and Krishna values that, right? And what makes Krishna's appreciation so touching is both his position and his disposition, right? Because he's the supreme. He controls everything in existence. And he can control everything except there's one thing he doesn't control. Do you guys know the one thing Krishna doesn't control? This is really beautiful. He doesn't control our hearts, right? He leaves that to us out of love because he's given us that free will and he never takes it away. Right? But yet that's the very thing that he longs for the most. So when anyone turns to him with even a hint of affection, he feels so grateful. Right? As if he's been given the biggest gift. Right? And then he says something very deep. He says, "The one who is in knowledge of me, I see that person just like my own self." Right? That's pretty deep. Right? He's saying that a person who understands him, the Jnani, the one who has knowledge and sees the truth of his nature, is so close to him that he considers them equal to him. Right? That's pretty big. But here's where the heart really comes out later. And later in the Gita, we're going to see that Krishna says that his devotees are more dear to him than his own self. Right? That's because he values love freely given above all else. So here he's saying the Jnani, the person who approaches me with knowledge, is equal to me. Right? I see is equal to me. But later in the Gita, he's going to say the devotee who approaches me with just pure love is is more dear to me than my own self. Right? We can make it relatable. If we think about like somebody, your friend calling you. Your friend can call you. Anybody have those friends who call you only when they need something? You see their name pop up on your phone. You're like, oh, what do they need? Right? Can you help me or lend me money or, whatever it is. You may help them, but the bond is limited by the agenda. Right? And that's kind of like the devotees who come to Krishna with just material desires. If you come to God just wanting something, he sees your name on the caller ID and is like, all right, what do they need now? It still loves them, still helps them, but there's some distance in the relationship because that's what it's based on, right? He still treasures it, but it's that's what it's based on, right? And then the next steps like it's a friend who maybe calls you because they've heard about you and they want to get to know you better. They might not have like a super deep personal connection yet, but they've heard about your qualities and are genuinely curious. Maybe like a friend of a friend. It's like trying to connect you. And so they've heard about you. They're curious, right? Krishna sees this person as equal to himself because their attention is directed towards him with understanding and awareness. So they're not looking for anything else. They're looking for him, but they're just the relationship isn't quite there yet, right? They have some knowledge, but they're not looking for personal gain. Okay, this is like the jnani, the person in knowledge, right? That's like the fourth category of the people who who seek God, that God is saying is like are very dear to him, right? Those are like the best of the four categories, right? But even better than that are people that reach out seeking relationship, right? That's the friend who calls you just to connect with you, like with no favors, no requests, no hidden motives. Right? They just genuinely enjoy your company. They call you. Right? They want to hear from you. They want to know how you're doing. Right? That's like the pure devotee who comes to God for love alone. Right? That's like the strongest bond because this is unbreakable. Right? It's this inseparable tie of devotion. So this is the bond that Krishna treasures above all. And we haven't got there yet. He's gonna reveal this later in the Gita, but I'm just giving you kind of like a, what do they call that? Like a foreshadow, right? Of where we're going. And we can all think about which of these like friend calling examples feels most like your own relationship with God right now. You know, or maybe even like, maybe you're kind of a mixed friend. Different kinds of relationships with God. But the point is we want to aspire to the highest, right? We want to aspire to the friend who calls just to connect. Right? Just out of love, just out of genuine care. That's bhakti yoga. It's not sectarian, it's not like it's not like a religion, right? It's just devotion to God. So the progression is clear here, right? Some come with desires, some come with understanding, some come purely for love, right? Krishna, God values all of them, but his heart is most drawn to the one whose love is his unconditional and selfless. Right? That's where the deepest, most intimate bond lies. The place every seeker is ultimately moving towards. And this verse is talking more about the yoni, but we're just bringing it to devotion because that's the conclusion of the Gita, and so we like to sprinkle it through every verse so that we can see the whole thing in context, right? Okay. So does anybody want to share anything before we move to 719? Is that clear to you guys? When reflecting on how you guys approach God, how do you guys feel that you approach God? I feel like I approach God a lot when I'm in like distress, or even not even that I'm like asking for anything, but just like I just like feel like I need a friend or something. If I'm like, and sometimes I feel like that's even why I'm drawn to chanting, is because it just like makes me feel peaceful. Yeah. Sometimes, I feel like I'm getting close to the relationship, but a lot of times I feel like God like relieves me from suffering, if I'm being honest. Yeah, you're shaking your head, Stella. Do you relate to that?
Yeah, definitely. When you have when you're in pain or something, just, again, and like you said, like not even just to ask for it to stop, but just to be there, like just to know he's there, just to turn and say, I'm yours, I'm yours, I'm yours. Like, because it's really scary if you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
So
just
it's
like
just,
comfort in that relationship. There's
yeah,
like a mother-child or something.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And it automatically makes you feel better just reaching out. Yeah, what does Andrew say? Yeah, I had my headphones playing kirtan during a bad tooth extraction yesterday. I embraced the mantra throughout. Yeah. I did the same thing during child labor and it was like amazing.
yeah.
It does have that effect. Yeah, Krishna's merciful. What do you think, Kay?
every time we are fearful, and we are fearful every day, fear about this or that everyday thing. And we know we have that awareness now, grace, with his grace, that he's protecting us. He's there. I mean, I belong to him. I'm the part and parcel of him. So he's there. He's there. And he is going to protect me. That kind of faith is getting stronger. That kind of relationship. Like going to the dentist or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And these like and reaching out to God for things other than pure love, it's going to be natural,
Yeah.
because we're just kind of like babies in our relationship. And that's okay. Like God accepts that. But even just to know that, wherever we are, however we're approaching God, know that the highest is pure devotion, and know that that's what we're aspiring for. And I think maybe it was Katie or somebody said, even like we can, in the last class, we can pray for that, you know, as even if, we're approaching him for other things or relief from our suffering or material things, whatever it is, it's a doorway in. And by God's mercy, he can even transform that desire to one of pure devotion. And he will, and he will, to the degree that we're sincere. So, should we move on? Should we move to the 19th verse? Whenever you're ready, Stella.
After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare.
Thank you. So, again, in chapter 7, Krishna's talking a lot about how people relate to him. We talked about the four types of people who don't surrender to Krishna, right? And even though they don't reject him outright, these folks are still caught up in various attachments and misunderstandings. Right? And then after that, he talks about the four types of people who start engaging with him, right? Gradually coming closer and eventually surrendering fully. Okay, so that's where 719 comes in. He's talking about what happens when someone truly surrenders. Right? Like after many lifetimes, after many small steps of progress, they finally realize this profound truth, right? That Krishna is the ultimate cause of everything, and that there's no reality besides him. Right? That's a huge realization. And Krishna points out that such great souls are very rare. So if we think about it like a journey up a mountain, the climb isn't instant. There's many small steps, small efforts, maybe even stumbling along the way. Right? But over many lifetimes, or some just years of sincere practice, someone gradually turns from seeking temporary gains to seeking Krishna sincerely. Right? Just for him. And that's what 719 is describing. That's what we're talking about here. The culmination of that journey, right? When devotion becomes constant, it becomes pure, it becomes heartfelt. And so we're not just approaching Krishna for some pain relief, right? Or some peace, but actual relationship. The actual relationship with no strings attached. And it's hard to even fathom of that in this material world because all of our relationships have some kind of strings attached, some more than others. But this is just pure devotion. And it takes time to build. Just like any relationship takes time to build. This relationship takes time to build. And because the standard is so high, right? Pure devotion, it might take us a good amount of time. Right? So that's what it's saying here. This such a great soul is very rare. So we think about a child who gets completely fixated on a toy, right? They beg their mom for it. She says no. They get upset, right? They throw a tantrum, right? They say, "Mom, you don't love me." Did anybody ever say that to their parent? think I've probably said that to my parents. Sorry, Mom. My mom's on the call. But anyway, the child forgets all the ways that their mother has cared for them. Right? The meal she's cooked, the night she stayed up when they were sick, the constant protection, affection, all the things. It gets, and this all gets reduced down to whether or not they got that one toy. Right? And it's funny. It sounds funny, or like, that child just doesn't get it. Right? When we hear these stories. But the reality is that we can all be this way with God. Right? If something that we've been praying for doesn't happen, or maybe we have like a really big, terrible thing happen in our lives, right? We lose someone we love. Somebody gets a disease. And it's easy to feel like maybe he doesn't love me, right? And this can be this can be a reality for a lot of people. This could be quite an obstacle to faith, right? When these bad things happen, right? But if we pause, we can see we have to see much broader than that, right? We can see that his love is woven through every part of our lives, right? The very fact that we're alive, that we have, the basics that we need to live, food, shelter, right? And even that we're in the position where we can seek spiritual truth, right? It doesn't take much to look around and see God's mercy and love in our lives. Even if something in our lives isn't going the way that we'd like, right? But what happens is that our attachments, the things that we think we have to have, act like filters and they narrow our vision. And when we're looking through those filters, we miss the abundance of love and blessings that are already there. And then another layer on top of that is that our attachments don't just limit our vision, but they make us restless. Right? Like if we think about it, when we don't have what we want, we feel anxious, we feel incomplete. Right? We're on this cycle. Right? We want, we get, we want, we get. Right? Maybe there's different amount of times between the want and the get, but regardless, you're going to just be on this like Ferris wheel. Right? We want, we get, the satisfaction doesn't last. Right? A new phone feels amazing for a while, but eventually it's just another phone. The promotion's great, but then there's a new bar to reach. Right? That's like this cycle of material desire. It just keeps us chasing, but it's never completely fulfilled. This is material desire, and it is like an endless Ferris wheel. And unless you get this knowledge to see a way out of it. Right? So the Gita explains that the material world is temporary and it's limited. And the joy that we experience here, it's real, but it fades. That's the nature of it. And as long as our hearts are tied only to temporary things, dissatisfaction, restlessness, it's built in. It's guaranteed. It's like built into the program. It's absolutely going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Right? So that this is why Krishna, he doesn't want to just be like a shock absorber, like easing the bumps of life for us, right? He'll do that. And we've all experienced that. I mean, actually that even like helps us build faith because just turning to him for shelter, we see even if nothing in our life changes, just that relationship we see, makes things better. Right? But he ultimately wants to be more than that. He wants to be a goal transformer. He wants to lift our vision higher, helping us to see that he's actually the ultimate goal of life. Right? Only Krishna can fully satisfy our deepest longings for peace, for love, for joy. That's what he's actually trying to show us. Right? We might get in and realize that he's a pretty good shock absorber. Right? But ultimately, he wants to show us that he's actually a goal transformer. Right? And that's where we get the highest peace, love, and joy. You might get some relief from suffering when he's our shock absorber. Right? But the ultimate peace, love, joy, connection is when we see him as the ultimate goal in our lives. And this is easy for people to say, but to actually live it, again, it's like another step. Right? Because when we're actually living it, all of those other things in our lives are supporting that. Right? It's like when raising your child is your highest goal, and then your job becomes becomes a means to support that highest goal. Right? I know that priority kind of shifted for me. I used to be super career oriented. I still care about my job, but I see it more as a way to kind of support my family. Right? So when God becomes our goal, now we're like really zooming out, right? When God becomes our goal of life, the things in our life are we start to naturally situate them to support that goal, and it's just natural when God's in our heart, right? And He becomes the Lord of our heart, the Lord of our life, right? It's just we naturally situate those other things to be conducive to it, right? Like I need to go to bed early so I can wake up early for my sadhana. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. I don't really want to drink anymore because it takes my consciousness down, and I want it to be high for a connection. All of these little things, what kind of job you choose, what kind of association you have, how you spend your free time, right? And so as we start to realize that God is the actual goal, we see these things happening naturally in our lives. Right? So this is what the Gita is teaching us, right? We're eternal souls. We're parts of Him. We're meant to delight with Him in His imperishable abode, right? And it's the static harmony of spiritual love. And so when we can do this, when we start to approach Krishna not just as a shock absorber, but as a goal transformer, we open ourselves up to the highest blessings. And this is tricky. This is a tricky thing to do when we're in this material existence, and dissatisfaction is everywhere. Right? It's like epidemic. We wish our car was newer, our house was bigger, our paycheck was bigger. Right? Sometimes it's dissatisfaction. It shows up in bigger life-defining ways. Right? And sure, upgrading or improving things can make life more bearable. But we have to understand that it never really uproots the dissatisfaction at its core. We have to like kind of step back and recognize that. Like no matter how big my house is, no matter how big my paycheck is, right? No matter how skinny my body is, right? It's never actually going to uproot dissatisfaction at our core. Because at our core we're not just bodies or consumers chasing the next upgrade. There's something deeper inside. Right? There's this eternal soul that's connected to God, right? The supreme reality. Right? And we're longing for that relationship. And because that's what we actually are, these eternal souls, nothing in this material world can actually satisfy that longing. And we'll keep trying. We'll keep trying. Right? We'll think if I could only have this, if I could only get this promotion, right? If I could only have this many kids, whatever it is, we'll keep trying. But eventually, because life is like a Ferris wheel, we'll arrive right back down at the bottom, right? Until we realize that God is the actual goal and that connection is the only thing that actually satisfies our soul. Right? Whatever beauty, joy, attraction we find in this world, it's just a spark of His brilliance, right? If anything, like we should see these things and it's like, wow, that's just a spark of God's brilliance. Like what to speak of, like the whole thing, right? As beautiful as a spark is, it's nothing compared to the blazing sun. Right? We're just seeing these little fragments of light coming off from the sun, right? But the sun is Krishna. The satisfaction that we get from material things, it's real, but it's fleeting, right? Just like the glow of a spark. But the satisfaction we get from Krishna, it's full, it's lasting, it's complete. It's like standing in the sunlight itself. And when you do that and you go out in the morning and like the whole sunlight, you look at the sun and the whole sunlight just like warms your face. My mom loves to do this. I think of my mom, you just look at the sun and it just warms your whole face. Right? That's like Krishna. Right? It just warms your whole being. right? As opposed to like those little hand warmers that you wear when you go skiing, that you hold on to, and it's like, okay, everything on me is frozen except my hand. Right? So like the joy you get from this material existence, it's like those little partial hand warmers. You can hold on to it, your hand will be warm, but like your toes are still freezing. Right? But when we're connected to God, when we're getting our satisfaction from that, it's like our whole body is in the sun. Right? And we're just warmed from head to toe. That's where we want to get to. Right? And when we feel a little bit of warmth, a little bit of joy from material existence, we should know that that's just Krishna's energy. Right? Know what's waiting for us. So developing this conviction that Krishna is the ultimate fulfillment of every desire, it's not going to happen overnight. Right? And this is what the Gita is saying. It's saying it can take lifetimes. And those who truly see this, they're rare. Right? But the hopeful part is that we can all move towards this realization in our very life if we let the wisdom of the Gita guide our hearts, right? And redirect our love towards him. And that's how this dissatisfaction, it begins to lose its grip. Right? Instead of like endlessly chasing sparks, we start turning towards the sun. And then it's a process and it's not linear. We're chasing some sparks and then we feel a little glimmer of the sun and we turn towards it for a moment. Right? And then we get distracted again by some sparks. So this is the process. And when it comes to love, the Gita is offering us something radical, right? It's not asking us to love blindly or with half-closed eyes. Right? Worldly love often works this way. Right? We ignore the fact that time will take everything away from us, so we just keep enjoying it. That's the only way really to get through this world. If you don't have a higher power to rely on, right? It's just like don't think about it. Right? But the Gita's saying, open your eyes, use your intelligence, ask the hard questions. Right? Is there a love that actually lasts? And the answer is yes. Yes, Krishna is eternal. And so are we. When our love is directed towards him, it isn't threatened by time, loss, right, death. It continues forever. That's the other thing here. Right? So it's like the reservoir of joy, connection, right? But it's eternal. This relationship, it lasts forever. You never have to get out of the sun. That's good news. Okay? So the Gita gives us this intellectual conviction. It shows us how this love makes sense, right? And then it lets us experiment with it. It gives us some ways to experiment with it. And this is through bhakti yoga. We don't just understand divine love with our head, right? We taste it, we feel it, we live it. That's how we experience it through the bhakti yoga practice. And that's what bhakti yoga is. It's a practice to connect with source. Right? So that's what the beauty in the Gita's message is. It's not like bypassing the head to reach the heart. It's carrying us beyond the head into the heart, into a love that is sweeter. Right? It's deeper, it's truly unbreakable. Right? And that's when spiritual growth really accelerates. Right? Not in your life, like when you get every toy that you want, but when your love stops depending on the toys at all, like when you get off the Ferris wheel. Right? That's when your spiritual life really starts to accelerate. You get this toy, okay. You get a promotion, great. You get fired, okay. Right? We're going to be upset. We're going to experience some emotion, but it's not going to shake us to our core where we start to, question our very identity, right? The kinds of questions we're going to be asking more are like, how is this going to impact my time for my sadhana, right? Or my ability to support my family so that we can be peaceful, right? So the Gita shows us that there's a spiritual progress. It isn't always linear, right? Sometimes tiny acts of kindness or devotion done without thinking, right? Done without thinking of like the reward will prepare our heart to recognize Krishna as everything. Right? So we just do pious acts, and even that is preparing your heart. Everything is preparing our hearts. If unless we're going down and then it's not preparing our hearts, right? But surrender, the takeaway is the same. Surrender is a process. It's not rushed, it's not forced. Over time, through awareness, practice, right? Even simple, just pious acts, the heart opens. And then when someone fully surrenders, right, they see Krishna as the ultimate cause of everything. They reach this rare and powerful state. That this soul is fixed in devotion, right? They're free from illusion. They're fully aligned with the divine. So that's what this verse is teaching us, right? It's reminding us that the spiritual evolution is gradual. So we be patient, right? But it's profoundly transformative. Does anybody want to share anything? Any takeaways from this verse? Any reflections?
I could say something. It
Yeah.
reminded me of one time when I was in a park, and it was really beautiful, and the water was really clear in the lake, and you could see the reflection of the trees and stuff. And I remembered what the Gita had said about the material world being a reflection of the spiritual world, but it's all like, and so when I was looking at the water's always moving, but the images were flat. Like I could see the trees and even a bird flying by in the water, but it was shaky and it was flat. And then I turned around to look at the trees, and I remember this moment of like, oh my God, it's 3D, and you could see all the textures and like smell it, and like it was just like, and I thought that's the difference between the spiritual and material worlds. Like, you know, going from this flat, wiggly thing to like this just enormous beauty and space that just, I don't know. I just, that's, I don't know why I thought of that while you were talking.
That's perfect and beautiful. Yeah. And that's exactly it, right? Like the spiritual world has dimension that we can't even conceive of.
Yeah, dimension. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
word.
Yeah, and what we're seeing here in this material world, we think it's great because it's a lot of people, it's all that they've ever experienced, right? If they haven't, they don't have a spiritual practice where they even kind of get glimpses into other dimensions, right? It's just it seems so great because that's all that we see. But but if we turn around and actually look at the tree that is causing that reflection,
Yeah.
we see something so much deeper. Yeah. And that's what Krishna's encouraging us to do here is to turn away from the reflection and see the tree and focus on the tree, right? Stop getting distracted by the reflections constantly. And we get distracted by the reflections, right? When we spend all of our free time and energy watching Netflix, going to the mall, right? It's like all these time killers on our phones. Right? Not that these things are bad in themselves, but we can't make them the goal of life. We can't turn to them for refuge.
Yeah, and it seems too that if you really go into tamas or ignorance, that you not only just look at the reflection, but you start walking into the dark water, and then you dip below the reflection and you're in darkness and just like this murky, weedy place.
Yeah, it gets darker, it binds you more.
Yeah.
And it's like then it's nearly impossible to turn back, right? Because you're just like so captivated by it.
You're stuck in the weeds down there. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what the Gita warns us about, right? That's why in spiritual life, like many of us don't drink alcohol, right? Because it can really pull us down
Yeah.
deep, and it's hard to come back up after that. And I know that my dad's an alcoholic, and my dad came out to visit us, and my husband was like, that was an experience for me. I've never seen anything like that. It's like every thought is alcohol. It's sad, but it's the reality. And we can see that and think, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy." But we're all, maybe we're at a higher mode of consciousness, but maybe every thought is our job. Right? Or our thought is, how can I get more money? Okay, it's okay, sure, your consciousness is maybe a little bit higher, but you're still attached. You're still engrossed in the reflection. The Gita is saying transcend it all. Right? Make me your goal. That's what we're learning here. Make me your goal. Until I'm your goal, you're still just stuck in the reflection, right? Maybe a higher part, but still. Yeah, let's all recognize where we're stuck in the reflection.
And if we turn around, we could start to walk into the forest. And who will we meet in the forest?
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about Bhakti Yoga too, right? It's not like we have to wait till we die. It's like, no, you can practice this right now. You can, you know, be in the material world, but have this spiritual consciousness. Yeah. That's the practice of Bhakti Yoga. We're so fortunate to have this process to learn these things. Yeah, and somehow the more time that we spend in the forest, when we come back to the reflection, it's like, oh, this isn't very interesting. Right? That's what happens naturally, right? Be careful how much time you spend if you're not quite ready to be pulled out of the water, right? Because the more time we spend, the more it's like, this isn't really very exciting, actually. Yeah, very nice. Thank you, Stella. Should we move on to the next text? 20, I think we are.
Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures.
Thank you. Okay, so at first this might seem a little bit confusing, right? Like, why would someone worship demigods instead of Krishna directly? And we talked about what demigods are, right? Like they're like posts, just like governmental posts to carry out functions of Krishna's creation, right? And people worship like different gods, like the god in charge of rains or, fertility or whatever it is. They worship that governmental post in charge of that particular area because they want some kind of fruit from that area. Right? So what this verse is saying is that if people that aspire have material desires, they'll worship these demigods for these material boons or material benefit, whatever it is. So Krishna's explaining here that not everyone surrenders to him directly. And again, if driven by material desires, you naturally turn to demigods. And so, but the important point here, Krishna is making a clear distinction. Even though some modern perspectives say, all gods are one, the Gita differentiates between Krishna as a supreme personality and then the demigods who are subordinate, right, and specialized in their functions. So this matters just because it shows that there's a structured system for spiritual elevation depending on one's consciousness. And that's why this system exists the way that it does. And that's what makes this Vedic system so practical. It's designed to meet people where they are. So depending on your material and your spiritual tendencies, your mode of nature, there's guidelines to help you advance. So if someone's in the mode of passion or ignorance, there's prescribed rituals and devotional acts that can gradually elevate them. Right? If someone's in the mode of goodness, there's more direct devotional service as possible. Right? But we can think of it like a staircase. Like most people gradually ascend step by step through worship appropriate to their level. That's what the Vedic system is providing. Right? So it's not that Krishna is absent, but they're simply following a system suited to their current capacity. We talked about this before too, like the role of demigod worship in Vedic philosophy. And that's what it is. It meets people where they're at while still allowing them to surrender to some capacity to a higher power, right? Even if it's not the highest, which is God, right? These are like posts that act on behalf of God. And so this is where it gets beautiful, though. Sometimes a pure devotee can intervene. And so instead of taking the gradual staircase, you can take a swift elevator. And that's what Prabhupada did. He could elevate people who were deep in ignorance, right? They were super immersed in tamas, like the lowest mode of consciousness. Hippies who were drinking or smoking or were doing drugs, right? And in that way, they could be guided towards pure devotion. So that's the mercy of a pure devotee. Someone can shortcut the gradual system of this demigod worship and directly inspire Krishna consciousness. Right? But if that mercy isn't received, then the Vedic system still provides a structured path through rituals and gradually elevating their practices to bring someone closer to Krishna over time. And that is demigod worship. Again, you still have material desires. It's still what you're approaching God for. But it gives you these kind of direct relationships of which to do that while you're still honoring that higher power. And in that way, you're making steps closer to Krishna. Right? So the takeaway is really just that Krishna's system, the way he even sets it up, it's compassionate and it's practical. Right? Some people will naturally follow demigods and their prescribed rituals because of their current consciousness. And that's okay. Krishna set that system up for them. Right? And again, knowing that it could take lifetimes to reach him, but at least they're starting to climb up the stairs. Right? At least they're acknowledging a higher power. Right? They're realizing that everything that happens is not a result of just their own efforts. Right? They're creating a little space in their lives for a higher power. Maybe not the highest power, but still. Right? But again, ultimately, if someone receives the mercy of a pure devotee, they can bypass the slower steps and move directly towards surrender to Krishna. Right? And this is where we should all, here on this call, have some appreciation for the people, for those devotees that brought us on this path. Right? Because we can experience that. We can get off of that Ferris wheel, that material Ferris wheel. We can experience little glimpses of that in this life. Right? And we can take the elevator ride up. But this verse is just reminding us that this spiritual advancement, it's tailored, it's gradual, it's full of mercy. And Krishna's care is always present. Right? Even if we don't see it at first. He cares for us. Even in the systems that he designs, he cares for us. And we're going to see even more in the next verse how he cares for us through those systems. It's his huge heart is just unfolding. And we're getting glimpses into this. How compassionate he is, how accepting he is, how strong his desire is for us to turn back towards him. I mean, if you think about it, he provides all these different opportunities. Right? Even if we're so infatuated with the reflection, he'll say, okay, that's fine. I get it. You're into that. But at least, at least as you're walking towards that reflection, acknowledge that something other than yourself is helping you walk there. Right? Is facilitating that reflection for you. Really. It's actually facilitating that reflection. Recognize that. Right? And as we can start to get out of our own ego, right, and expand our consciousness and understanding that we're not the center, right, and that we're actually, everything that we have is actually given to us, right? We're being cared for. And as we can start to expand our consciousness and see something more than just our own self, our own efforts, right, we're gradually taking steps to Krishna. And he's providing us the facility to do that, no matter where you are, because he loves us, no matter where you are, and doesn't give up on us. Right? Doesn't give up on us, no matter how full we are in that reflection. And even when we give up on ourselves, there's still opportunities. He's still throwing us these Hail Marys. Okay, that was a little bit of a tangent, but let's go. We'll go back to this system of demigod worship because we can learn some principles here of how compassionate and merciful Krishna is. So 21. This will be our last verse for the day. Whenever you're ready, Stella.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. I am in everyone's heart as the super soul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity.
Thank you. So again, Krishna's compassion, right? His approach to spiritual growth, right? What he's saying here is that when someone sincerely desires to worship a demigod, Krishna strengthens their faith in that direction, right? He doesn't reject demigod worship. He doesn't reject the worshipers himself, right? He gives them the faith of which they can do that, right? Because that faith, creates more faith, right? And expands their vision, their consciousness, and ultimately helps them take steps towards him, right? So this faith, Krishna reminds us, it's a matter of the heart, right? And as we know, Krishna's present in everyone's heart as the super soul, right? God in the heart. He sees our desires. He understands our limitations. Right? He helps us take the next step towards spiritual elevation. Right? So what does it say about Krishna's nature that he empowers faith even when it isn't directed to him directly? Most of us in the material world, we have a boss or a leader who wants everyone to recognize them, right? To acknowledge their status. Even like teachers in the movement, even like spiritual teachers can get into this consciousness where they want to be the teacher, right? And they don't want others to infringe. Right? Krishna's not like that. He isn't concerned with glorifying himself. He's focused on our elevation. Right? So when devotees glorify Krishna, that's wonderful. It reflects love and devotion. But even when they don't, Krishna's concern is that we grow spiritually. Right? That's his concern. So this verse is really highlighting his broad-heartedness, his supreme compassion, his lack of ego. He's genuinely happy whenever someone progresses, right? No matter what path they take. This is making me think of I still do actually really love the Thanksgiving Day parade. Right? And when I lived in New York, I used to go to it. And I went to it a few years, and one year I remember I was walking around, I was chanting, and I was like, man, it'd be so amazing to get to go to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, like to get to sit in the bandstand, And I'm thinking that, and I look down, and there's this like golden ticket on the ground. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I pick it up, and it's a ticket to go sit in the grandstand. It was like amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, I felt a little bit guilty for like chanting and praying for that, but at the same time, I was like, wow, who knows? But like, I felt like, Krishna heard my prayer and gave me this golden ticket, and it's like, okay, it did definitely grow my faith in that moment. I was like, whoa. But this is kind of like what, demigod worship. You want material things, you approach demigods for these material things, you get these material things, your faith grows, right? You're having a relationship with a higher being. You're turning to a higher being for your desire. Even though it's material, there's still some relationship happening there. And Krishna will accept that. He'll take that and he'll grow that faith even so that you can make spiritual progress. Right? So some people will wonder, if Krishna is supreme, why do the Vedas even talk about other demigods? Right? And Krishna is giving us this answer. He's saying it's not a contradiction. It's an expression of his own compassion. Right? So by allowing and even supporting demigod worship, Krishna gives people in lower modes of consciousness a structured way to advance spiritually. That's what's happening here. Right? They may not directly worship him at first, but they're still moving upwards from lower modes to higher modes. Right? Their faith is growing, their heart's softening. And therefore they're preparing for deeper devotion to God. Right? But notice here that both the demigod and the worshiper, they're dependent on God. Right? He empowers the demigod to perform their functions, and he gives the worshiper their faith to sincerely engage in worship. So it's all his arrangement. right? Through this, everyone is elevated, right? No one is left behind. So the takeaway here again, Krishna's compassion is vast, right? He meets people where they are. He strengthens their faith according to their desires and ensures that everyone can progress spiritually. Whether someone worships a demigod or eventually surrenders to Krishna directly, the super soul in the heart is always guiding, always supporting, always elevating. So when we step back and look at these verses together, there's a beautiful thread running through them. You know, Krishna's showing us how big his heart is. And we should feel this, right? We should know this. He treasures every approach, whether someone comes to him in distress, out of curiosity, with material desires, right, and knowledge or love. He accepts it all with gratitude. Just like a parent who is overjoyed when their child finally reaches out. Right? But he's showing us the progression that over time, through many lifetimes, the soul gradually moves from seeking these temporary things to seeking Krishna himself, the ultimate source of love and fulfillment. So the journey, it can feel long, but it's guided every step. Sometimes through systems like demigod worship, right? Sometimes through the direct mercy of a pure devotee, right? But it's always by Krishna himself, right? Who's in our heart, who's strengthening our faith, and who's nudging us closer to him. So the takeaway is that Krishna's never pushing us away. He's always meeting us where we are. Right? Whether we come with mixed motives or pure love, he treasures it. Right? But he also wants more for us, not just the sparks of happiness, but the blazing sun. Right? That deeper relationship that comes through the surrender, through seeing him as the cause of all causes, the fulfillment of our desires. Right? So maybe the reflection that we can carry with us today is where am I on that journey? And what's one small step I can take to move closer to loving Krishna for his own sake? Because every step, no matter how small, is treasured by him. And every step brings us closer to this rarest gift of all, which is a heart fully surrendered in love. That's where we're actually trying to go with all this. Right? So that's the class for today. Do we have some reflections? Okay. Yeah, please share.
Even I started, I mean, the beginning was worshiping demigods, oh God, I hope I get the green card. That kind of worshiping I started. And then when I first came to America, and then finally, I mean, slowly, Krishna has, like you said, he meets us wherever we are. So the curiosity to know more about him, to just learn. He is the one who brought all this, into our life, the awareness or knowing more about him. And of course, we still don't know everything, or we know a little bit about him.
Yeah. Thank you. So nice. Stella, do you have any final reflections for us?
Just that I'm thank you, just gratitude for this message going into today. I mean, just how can we not be thankful that he's always meeting us where we are?
Yeah, you don't even have to worry about where you are. You just have to
Right.
try to make steps closer to him. Because
Yeah.
if that's your sincere intention, he'll arrange. It's not
Right.
even for you to worry about where you are. There's always a lifeboat available for you in the water of the material or of the reflection.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else before we end here? Okay, well, thank you all for coming, for sharing, and I'll see you all on Monday.
Thank you so much for the class. Thank you.